onto the block. The miner's role is to ensure that, yes, this is truly a valid Bitcoin. And once the miner confirms it, he gets paid for his service. So there's a bunch of miners. Everyone has the opportunity to confirm. The first one that confirms basically gets paid for his work. Now, what his job is to identify something which is very much hidden in that transaction. And that little secret tells you that, yes, this is truly an original Bitcoin transfer. It's like when we see, some of these original apparel, clothing apparel, and we want to know, is that truly original? But in order to look for that, we might, recognize something very unique about it. In the case of Bitcoin, there's something called a hash. And that hash is known as the SHA-256 hash. Okay? So a miner will look for that. But he needs a lot of processing power to identify that. And that's why just a few miners in the world can actually confirm that onto the blockchain. So if you ask me if it's different from cash and e-wallets, yeah, I'd say it's very different from cash and e-wallets. Cash, e-wallets, and usual internet banking and SMS banking, etc., applies your own fiat currency. So your ringgits are simply being transferred through a bank, through a channel, from one party to another. Here, we're transferring cryptocurrency from one party to another.
Okay, so what's the situation like in Malaysia? What's the actual status of cryptocurrencies? And what about people who actually use it and trade it?
Okay, so there are two different questions here. One is it valid currency? Two, can it be invested in and traded in? So very different questions. If we look at the currency part, then we know it's not legal tender. Now, currency from the Islamic perspective might not be defined as something that needs legal tender, but it's a global practice that a currency of a country is what is recognized by its government, by its sovereign. So therefore, if you ask, is cryptocurrency a legitimate legal tender? And in Malaysia, we say, no, it's not. The regulator says that it's not legal tender. But on the other hand, can you actually store it? Can it be investment? And yes, it can be investment as long as you identify it as valid investment. If you identify it as valid investment, that means now that you probably would have to pay tax for it. And then the regulator will now inquire whether that will be a recognized asset for tax purposes. So that's your kind of definition of whether it would fall within the asset base or whether it would be in the currency base.
I see. Okay, so what are your thoughts on some people in Malaysia who are actually using it as a form of investment? What would you have to say to them?
Well, looking for the next big thing is typical human behavior. We always want to know what's going up, and we want to invest in it and take part in the upside. But that's not always, very safe an investment. In order to do that, we need to understand the fundamentals of the market. Which means if you want to invest in cryptocurrency, at least understand how it functions, understand what's been going on globally in terms of the rise of these currencies and the decline of these currencies. Bitcoin, for example, was created in 2009, and it didn't experience much of a valuation appreciation until to 2017. At the beginning of 2017, this cryptocurrency shot through the roof, and everyone knows about Bitcoin's massive gain, and it hit $20,000 from a $1 valuation earlier. It hit $20,000 for one Bitcoin, making you an instant billionaire if you had just a few Bitcoins. So that type of investment, naturally, where things go up and down erratically, because a month later it dropped to $8,000. When investments go up erratically and go down, then it's highly speculative in nature. When they become highly speculative in nature, are they really good investments? Are they safe investments? So that would depend on your risk profile. If you are a highly aggressive investor that's looking for the next big thing but willing to lose everything, then by all means consider that as an investment. But if you're a bit cautious and you'd like a safer investment, then you have to consider whether this is the way you want to go.
Okay, so that's talking about stability. Also, on the topic of safety, how safe is it actually to deal online, especially when we have hackers and people who can actually get into your information? So what's your thoughts on this? How can hacking actually be done in the cryptocurrency world?
The specialty about blockchain technology, the unique selling point of blockchain is that it cannot be hacked. So the idea was to market a concept of cryptocurrency on a blockchain that can't be hacked. So in other words, ultimate safety. But the reality is, whilst the blockchain can't be hacked, the exchanges that offer the cryptocurrency can be hacked. And that's what's happened in the past, over the last year or so. We find that very large exchanges have actually been hacked, and a lot of bitcoins and crypto have been stolen using the exchange. So when you talk about safety from that perspective, then you have to consider whether the exchange that you are purchasing from or investing through is safe. So in other words, if you think about it from a banking perspective, our normal money uses a bank. We would go to a bank, put our money in, and then transact through a bank. Well, here, they're not going through banks. They're going through something called an exchange, which is really a server, a data server. So that records all the transactions. Now, is that safe? Now, that's the question you need to ask from a safety perspective. Yes, there have been hackings, but there have been very few. Okay, there have been very few hackings because it is quite difficult to get into even the exchanges. So for that matter, the question is, do people rob banks? Well, so from a percentage perspective, I wouldn't say that cryptocurrency is any much more dangerous than banking, except for the fact that banking is regulated whilst cryptocurrency is not.